Welcome to Beer with Alan. I'm Alan and I've had over 3,400 different beers since I started tracking back in 2014. I use the app called Untappd to track, so look me up there under Beer with Alan to see the beers that I've tried. Send me a friend request on there if you're interested. So I've been planning to make this podcast a regular thing. My videos are so short, so this will give me a chance to get into more detail about my favorite subjects, which are beer, running, and sports. This first episode will give you some background about me, and future episodes will include interviews with people in those worlds. I hope you join me for all of it. I thought I'd start out by giving you a bit of my history with beer. I started making videos in December of 2023, and I post each one on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. The Instagram videos automatically post to Facebook as well. Instagram is definitely my most active page with over 320,000 followers. TikTok's about to hit 80,000, while YouTube is only at about 4,000 and Facebook is at 2,300 or so. I'm happy when anyone follows me, so pick whichever service you prefer. I've been a fan of beer for as long as I can remember. When I was a freshman in college, everyone was drinking Busch, and I would always look for something different. Back then it was Molson, Moosehead, just something that seemed like it would be a little bit better. Eventually, I started finding Yuengling Lager and the other Yuengling beers. Anchor Steam was a big one for me when I first found that one out of San Francisco. Dock Street in Philadelphia, Samuel Adams from Boston, those were really big things for me. They were brand new kind of beers. They were different than everything else I was drinking. And they just had a really interesting flavor that I really enjoyed. Rogue Hazelnut was a beer that I found at Morimoto in Philadelphia in 2004 when I was there with my wife for an anniversary. This beer was like nothing I had had. It's a brown ale, right? It's an English brown ale basically, but it has a little bit of different flavor to it, and I just fell in love with it. A friend of mine introduced me to Chimay, which was my entree into Belgian beers, which I hadn't had before that. A few years later, a restaurant near me in Horsham, Pennsylvania called Iron Abbey opened up, and everybody who worked there, the bartenders, the waiters, everybody who was involved with the place really knew the beer, and they would make recommendations. That's where I first had my favorite beer in the world, which is St. Bernardus Abt 12, which is a Belgian quad, about 10%. It's great. If you've never had it, you really need to try this beer. It's fantastic. But that led me into a whole world of Belgian beer that I hadn't had any experience with, and I was so excited to get to try out. Quads, I love. Belgian triples, which are lighter in color, but still strong beers. Just fantastic. And a Belgian double, which again is a little bit lighter in alcohol, a darker beer than a triple. There are so many good doubles out there, and I feel like it's a really underrated style. Belgian Saisons, Belgian Wits, there's so many styles within the category of what people call Belgian. Sometimes I hear people say, I want a Belgian beer, and they're just thinking of like Blue Moon, like a Belgian Wit, or a Belgian style Wit in that case, since that one comes from Coors. But there are so many more styles in what we would call a Belgian beer. I'm headed to Belgium this summer in about 5 or 6 weeks or so. This was a trip I was supposed to do with my family last summer. And believe it or not, I screwed it up completely. The night before we were supposed to leave, I discovered that my passport was expired. I don't know how I did that. It was just a major shock, just a stunner, and really upsetting, obviously. Had to cancel the trip. Ended up going to Key West for a very, very different kind of trip, but still very enjoyable. But the whole trip is happening again to Belgium this summer. We're really excited to do that. So in 2014, I found the app called Untappd that I mentioned earlier. This allowed me to start tracking my beers, which I really only did because I was trying a lot of different things. And it was an opportunity to give it a rating, which was really for my own sake. I wasn't worried about sharing my ratings with anybody else. And it was something that I could refer back to know if I had had a beer before, what I thought of it when I had it, where I had it, all that kind of stuff. It was just good, interesting stuff to me. I've always been a guy, a bit of data guy. Like I like keeping track of things. It's just something that I do. So I started keeping track of the beers that I was having using the app. in 2014, and the count started to pile up. It wasn't something I ever really thought about, like what number was I at. I started paying a little bit more attention to, trying to get new beers more often, and finding things that were similar to other things that I liked. And I had a few friends on there, so I would see what they were having, and that would give me ideas of things to try. So it was interesting in that way. I never really thought about social media, about doing the videos that I do now. In fact, I was very against it when the subject first came up. Back in 2023, my daughter, who does a social media thing about television and film, that sort of thing, and my son-in-law, who now her husband, who also does a social media thing. His is about the stock market and investing. And the two of them, they both like beer. My daughter likes beer a lot. But they would, every time I would be talking to them about beer, they would say to me, you should make videos. People will watch them. And I thought that was like the most ridiculous idea I had heard. I was not interested in making videos. I felt very awkward with this idea of standing there talking to my phone, making videos, putting them out there for the world to see, but I didn't think the world was going to see them because I didn't think anyone was going to care to listen to some old guy talking about beer, honestly. But they kept working on me about it. They kept saying that they thought I was wrong, that they thought people would watch. And one day, right before Christmas, we were up in New York at a restaurant called Beer Authority, which is there in Manhattan. Always a really good beer place. We were having some good beer. I was, of course, talking about whatever beer I was having and what beers they were having and giving whatever I knew about them. And again, they said, you really need to do this. People will watch. Just give it a try. So the next day, I decided, okay, I'll do it. I made a video. I posted it. This was December 19th of 2023. I put a video out there on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube. And I thought, well, let's see if anything happens. A few hundred people saw it on TikTok. A handful of people saw it on YouTube, maybe a couple hundred. Instagram, nobody was watching. For the first few months I was doing this, the only people that were seeing the videos on Instagram were people that I was related to, I'm pretty sure, or close friends. I had only followed a few people, and so they had followed me back, and so they were watching them, but really they would get 20, 25 views. And but I kept at it. I thought, well, if I'm going to try this, I should try it, for a while. So pretty much every day I was making a video, coming up with something to talk about, and posting a video through those first couple of months then of 2024. One day in February, I was headed to Florida to go to my nephew's wedding. And I had a beer at the airport. It was a Goose Island Bourbon County brand stout. And, of course, at the place in the airport, they served it to me in like a plastic cup. And, that's a really strong beer. It's probably 14, 15%. And I made this video about the beer. And on TikTok, I think it kind of caught on for me. Like it was getting a few thousand views, which was unusual to me that one of these videos was doing well. But so it seemed to get a little bit of traction, and I found that appealing. Maybe I should keep doing this. I was trying to come up with themes. What could I talk about that might grab people? I started doing a series called Don't Drink That, Drink This, where I would take a commonly found mass-produced beer and make a suggestion for an alternative to it, something else that people could try if they liked that beer. I did call it Don't Drink That, Drink This, so I guess it had a little bit of a negative tinge to it. I try really not to be negative very often in my videos. I prefer positivity. I prefer to boost up the breweries that I'm talking about because I love beer. I love this industry. I want them to all succeed and continue making beer for me to enjoy and for all of you to enjoy. So I made the first one, which I think was Don't Drink Budweiser, Drink This. I don't even remember what my recommendation was, but that video didn't do anything in particular. And then the next day I made one that was don't drink Corona, drink this. And my recommendation was Firestone Walker's 805 Cerveza. Firestone Walker is a great brewery from California. If you've never tried it, it's a Mexican style lager, the 805 Cerveza, and it's good. I just think it's better than Corona. The flavor is better. The quality of the beer is better. I think people who like Corona would really like that beer. So I made that recommendation, and it was getting a few views here and there for the first couple of days. And then I think that was a Tuesday that I posted it. And on Thursday morning, I woke up and I looked at my phone and my notifications had gone crazy. I had never seen anything like it. And that video had just started to move and move and move. And over the next 2 weeks, that video got over 16 million views. It was the craziest thing I'd ever seen. I had no idea why it happened on that video. That video has 500,000 likes. It was so beyond anything that I had imagined might happen with making these videos. I was just amazed. And so my followers on Instagram went from maybe 50 to like 100,000 during those 2 weeks. And it's just built from there. It's been a really rewarding thing to see it grow, to interact with people, with the followers and just the people who are watching the videos, who comment and send me messages, and the people I've gotten to meet in person who've recognized me. And it's really kind of an amazing thing. I'm really very appreciative of it. I've really enjoyed seeing it happen. Like I said, seeing it grow. It's been a very exciting thing. I've gotten to meet so many brewers and be a guest at so many breweries. We've got trips that we've gotten to go on. We've got more trips coming up. It's really an amazing thing. And I want to be really clear that I am so grateful for all of this. So another big part of my history and a part of my podcast for going forward, a big part of my social media presence is about my running. I'm a marathon runner, but I am somebody who came to running late in life. I used to joke that if you had ever put all the distances that I had run in my life end to end, that they wouldn't add up to a mile. I don't know if that's true, but it doesn't seem like it's far off of the truth for me. I was never a runner. And back in 2010, I have twin girls, and they were born when I was 25. And so I was always a young dad. And my son was born 16 years later. And when he was going to be coming along, I was no longer going to be the young dad. In fact, I was going to be the old dad. I was very out of shape. I weighed about 75 pounds more than I do now. And I didn't know how I was going to keep up with a baby. And my daughter had been talking about doing track. She had done track in middle school. Now she was in high school. She was talking about maybe doing winter track that year. And so she kept saying she was going to go out and run. I didn't believe her. So I said to her, every time she would say it, I would say, well, if you go out and run, I'll go run with you. Because I was pretty sure she wasn't going to do it. So this one day, right after my wife had gotten pregnant, my daughter said that she was going to go run the next day. And then she said, are you going to come? And I said, yep. Again, not believing that she was going to go. But sure enough, she showed up the next day, dressed to go run, asked me if I was coming. So I thought, well, I kind of need to do it now. I've said it so many times. So I went out that day, late June of 2010, and tried to run a mile for the first time in my life. I made it about 2/3 of a mile before I just couldn't breathe anymore, and I just had to walk. So that was a little discouraging, although I was surprised that I made it 2/3 of a mile. But, what was interesting to me is I thought, well, maybe if I work on it, I could get to the whole mile. I could do the whole mile. So 2 days later, I went and tried again. And 2 days after that, I went and tried again. And it took me a month of going every other day before I made it through the whole mile without stopping. But once I got there, I was kind of hooked. I thought, well, I wonder if I can get to a mile and a quarter. So I would, run the mile and then, walk an eighth of a mile and then run another eighth of a mile, something like that. I kept increasing my distance by mixing in walking and running and then trying to get rid of the walks until my length of my run was better. And I built it up and I built it up over 6, 7 months. I got myself up to about 9 miles. I had decided that I was going to do the next Philadelphia Broad Street run, which was going to come about 6 months after that. And unfortunately, I hurt my back when I tore out our upstairs bathroom and I was rebuilding it in preparation for the baby coming. And I had a badly herniated disc that ended up requiring surgery. Had to take 5 months off of running. And by the time I got back to it, I was set all the way back to only being able to run about a mile and a half. But I quickly built that up again. It was too late to do that Broad Street run. So I aimed for the Philadelphia Half Marathon, which was in November of 2011. That was the first race I ever did. And, I got through that. I really enjoyed it. I planned for the next summer to do what was called the Philadelphia Rock and Roll Half Marathon at the time, which was in September of 2012. They now call that one the Philadelphia Distance Run. And while I was training for that, I kept thinking about doing a full marathon. My wife encouraged me to do it, so I trained all the way up to do the Walt Disney World Marathon in January of 2013. That became my first marathon. I've done 16 marathons total, and I'm looking into my next one, which will be sometime this fall. So that was that was my journey to becoming a distance runner. Not something I ever dreamed would happen in my life. Honestly, I thought just going out to just run sounded really boring. I was never one to be really able to relax a lot. And I found that running relaxed me, that I could kind of forget about everything else and just kind of get into the run. And it really did a lot of good things for me. And I still enjoy my run every time. As I get older, running gets harder, especially in the heat. But I never skip it. Even if it's raining, whatever, I find a way to go out and do my run because, I really need that mental break. I run 5 times a week. I do runs on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, which are 5 or 6 miles, depending on the day. I do a 4-mile run on Saturday morning, and then my long run is on Sundays. I do 10 miles generally. This is all if I'm not training. When I'm training for a race, the mileage gets higher. It's why I keep pushing for later and later races in the fall or even the winter, because doing the really long runs, the 18 miles, the 20 miles, the 21 miles, doing those in the summer is really difficult. I had a great run this past Sunday on Forbidden Drive in Philadelphia. I made a video from there. I don't know if you saw that one, but it's such a great place to run. It was the place where I first started going years ago to do my long runs. It's just a great place. It's all separated from the roads. It's like a dirt trail, so it's not as hard as asphalt and certainly not as hard as running on concrete. There's a lot of great scenery. There's a lot of elevation changes, different things. It makes for a really enjoyable run, as long as it's not muddy. Yeah, I enjoy it there a lot, and I was really glad to get back there. I don't get there as often anymore. I tend to look for flatter places for most of my long runs, but it was good to be there on Sunday. I enjoyed that a lot. As far as that next marathon that I mentioned, I'm looking right now at maybe doing one of a couple of marathons that I've already done before, but maybe doing a repeat. Thinking of Kiowa Island in South Carolina, just outside of Charleston, which is a race that I enjoyed a lot. I did a few years ago. And one that I did just a couple years ago, Rehoboth Beach Marathon in Delaware. Rehoboth Beach is a great town. There's great beer there too. Dogfish Head is right there in town in Rehoboth. And the run was really nice. The people that were there were really nice. Really enjoyed that a lot. I mentioned that I'm a huge sports fan, and I do talk about that in my videos sometimes as well. I just made a video the other day that a lot of people disagreed with, where I talked about this being a rough time of year for me as far as sports goes. Um, I love individual sports, but I love team sports the best. Football is my favorite. American football is my favorite. I'm a huge Eagles fan. I'm a huge Penn State fan. And those are the things that I get most invested in. I am a big Phillies fan. I'm a fan of the Philadelphia 76ers and the Flyers and the Philadelphia Union. I'm a big fan of Leeds in the English Football League and the Premier League. And I like a lot of other sports too. I like golf. I like tennis. I like, a lot of other events that go on throughout the year. But this time of year where football has been over for a while, and now the Sixers and the Flyers are both out of the playoffs, and I honestly don't pay a great deal of attention to the NBA playoffs or the NHL playoffs when my teams aren't in there. I know some people might think that's lame, but I lose interest quickly when my teams aren't there. I'll still follow it. I'll still pay attention to the results, but I'm not going to sit and watch too many of the games. So really right now it's the Phillies, and I watch the Phillies every day. The World Cup is coming, and so that's exciting, right? I'm going to watch a whole lot of that. I'm glad we've got that this year, but that's obviously not an every year thing in the summer. It's been a rewarding season to see Leeds back in the Premier League this year and staying up. They had various good stretches of the season, various stretches of the season that weren't so great. This win the other day over Brighton was really exciting. The crowd was really into it. Scoring the late goal that they did and winning that match was just really exciting to watch. But I am excited for the World Cup and watching that. My son and I went to the practice rounds at the PGA on Tuesday. It was last Tuesday. It was here in the Philadelphia area at Aronimink Golf Club, and it was a beautiful place. We had a great day. We got to meet some of the golfers. We got to see the crowds that were there. I got to meet some people who watch my videos, which is always fun. It was really nice. But summer is not my favorite time for sports. It's also not my favorite time for running, as I've already mentioned. But it'll still be a good summer. There'll still be plenty of good sports to see. To wrap things up on the beer end of things, I want to give my current beer count, which I know people sometimes ask me for. If they're not friends with me on Untappd, they don't know it because I don't say it in every video. Current beer count is 3,425. Number 3,500 is coming, and timing-wise, it looks like it's very likely to happen during my trip to Belgium at the end of June, beginning of July. So that's exciting. I'm sure I'll find something great there to drink for my 3,500th. The best beer I had of this past week was the Bourbon Barrel Aged Triple-Nator from Troegs. Troegs is a Pennsylvania brewery. They're out in Hershey. Triple-Nator is a kind of a big version of a famous beer of theirs called Troegenator, which is a Doppelbock. Triple-Nator is just a much stronger version of that beer, and it's one of my absolute favorites. This bourbon barrel-aged version of it was really good as well. I'm still not sure if I like the barrel-aged Triple-Nator better than just the regular Triple-Nator. They're both great beers, both very strong, both great flavor, and they age well. So if you get a hold of one, maybe buy a couple of them, put one away, and see how it is down the line. As far as beer trips go, I've got a trip coming up next week. Next Thursday, I'm flying out to California, going to Paso Robles to the Firestone Walker Invitational Beer Festival, which is a thing that happens every year. Some of the best breweries in the world will be represented there. I'm really excited to go. I'm really excited to make some content, to share it with you guys. There'll be videos, there'll be Instagram stories, there'll be photos, there'll be a lot of things coming from there. I'm going to get to try a lot of great beer and meet a lot of great people, make some new contacts, and maybe some of the people that I meet there will be involved in some of the interviews that I plan on doing in this podcast in the coming months. So I hope you'll join me. I hope you've enjoyed this. Like I said, future ones will be a little bit different because they'll be more focused on interviews, but this one gave you a lot of background. Hopefully you'll keep coming back and listen to the podcast. Thanks very much, everybody. Cheers.